Texas, Alabama. This is the game this week. Obviously, we talked deep about Alabama first impressions. Texas, of course, 37-10 over Rice. A little bit uneven, a good defensive performance. Offense got on track in the second half. But this was a game that was center stage last year. And you have people that say if Quinn Ewers doesn't get knocked out in the first quarter, maybe they win this game. And we've had some people, even on this podcast feed, David Ubben, who have said that, Ari Wasserman, who have said that Texas is going to go in there to Tuscaloosa and win this game. Now, they are an underdog. I believe they're 7.5-point underdog as we sit here and record this. But what's your sense for where Alabama is coming into this game and what type of intensity, if it's going to be down to the wire, what we might see on Saturday when Texas comes to Bryant-Denny Stadium?
Yeah, I think again, motivation is a huge aspect to this because kind of maybe I guess a lot of lost in the fact that was such a close game last year. Was Bama was like really heavy favorites in that game, and they were expected to kind of roll Texas, and it turns into a Bryce Young hero drive at the end to win by 1. So I think that there's something to prove from Alabama's side. I think defensively, the way that Sark was able to kind of undress them with motion and able to exploit a few things in their defense is going to be a talking point this week. As far as how I see the game playing out, I think the loss of Bijan Robinson is going to be a huge talking point, but the way that he was able to affect Alabama's defense in last year's game, where they had to commit so much to identifying him on the field, stopping him, opened up a lot in terms of RPOs, play actions, allow Quinn Ewers to get some quick throws and get the offense in motion. Without that element in the backfield, it'll be interesting to see how Sark tries to open up Alabama's defense. It feels like a game where Quinn Ewers is going to have to make, a lot of throws. I won't say every single throw because not every quarterback can do that, but he's going to have to make a lot of throws in this game to keep Texas viable. And that matchup between their skill players and Alabama's secondary is probably the biggest matchup to me. Alabama has a few safeties, Malachi Moore and Jalen Key, who are on the mend right now. They left the Middle Tennessee State game and their status is unknown. So hopefully we'll get answers about those two later today. But if Alabama's secondary is fully healthy, it's going to come down to Quinn Ewers' ability to execute it and hit some vertical shots against that unit. And on the Alabama side, like I said, if I'm Tommy Rees, I'm going to continue the same formula that I had against Middle Tennessee State. I'm going to have like a 65-35, run pass split, try to limit the possessions, try to establish some physical dominance and kind of control the clock and control the game. So 7.5 seems a tad high. I do have Alabama winning the game, but it does feel like a one possession game to me.
It's funny too. Last year, it sort of felt like Sark probably is leaning on all the secrets he knows about. Here's how to attack a Pete Golding defense, right? Here's what Alabama is going to do. Here's how we combat it. I feel like the influence of new coordinators there, Tommy Rees and Kevin Steele, probably is a bit of an advantage for Nick Saban. And I'm sure, gosh, guys, on both sides, I bet these OCs have been saving all the stuff, all the kitchen sink stuff for this game.
Yeah, definitely. That was, I think Sark might have spoken about that last night where he said, Alabama's offense kind of changed a bit. And one thing that I noticed, right away was Tommy Rees's implementing 12 personnel in a lot of what Alabama was doing. I think that first drive, they might have went exclusively 12 personnel. And I've made a note about that on Twitter. And I had a fan tweet me back and say, like, I've never seen this many tight ends on the field before at one time. So that's a room that's turned into a position of strength. I don't think that was on many people's bingo cards leaving spring practice, but they have 4 legitimate playable tight ends, and Tommy Rees is going to use that to his advantage. So even something a nuance like that is just something that Sark and the defense staff hasn't seen from Alabama. So that small thing I think could play a factor as well. And then on the defensive side, I think just the discipline is enough to kind of maybe sway things in another direction. Alabama's most penalized team in the country last year. They only had 2 on defense, I believe, on Saturday. So they really kind of cut down on that. Missed tackles weren't as big of an issue against Middle Tennessee State, but different caliber athlete dealing with Texas. So, it's kind of interesting that the three biggest questions for Alabama entering the season were Milroe at quarterback, and then Reese and Kevin Steele as coordinators. And I think, all three of them had probably the best debuts that they could have. And all of a sudden those might be three positions of strength. So we'll see what happens on Saturday. And I think we'll have a lot more clarity about where Bama stands after that.
Well, gosh, and the thing last year, Sam, I'm sure that Sark will point to this week. You go back and rewatch that game. It's Texas kicking field goals. I mean, if Texas should run away with that game if they can punch in touchdowns in the red zone. And there's just so many times they had to settle. How do you feel, Sam? Like situationally, this Texas team, like, do you think they're going to be better prepared? I mean, this is a tough environment to roll into. Obviously, night game at Bryant-Denny, but like, do you think Texas is, like, based on what you saw against Rice? Do you feel like they are ready to be kind of that team that can execute in some of those pressure moments when they kind of didn't last year? Granted, they were missing their quarterback.
See, I still think I have questions about that at this point, because I think the plan is there. And I think Steve Sarkisian, the way he scripts and the way they open up, I expect them to start fast, just like they did last year. He's a terrific game planner. His opening scripts are terrific. But I do have questions about their ability to execute. Quinn Ewers missing deep balls again on Saturday when they played Rice. I saw two Xavier Worthy balls down the right sideline that he had. If he hits them right on, they're big plays. They end up being incomplete passes. That's a question. Offensive line struggled to block against stunts and different looks that Rice threw at them. That's a question. The pass protection's got to be there, and they're going to have to give Quinn time. Kenny mentioned Bijan Robinson and the running game. Obviously, this is going to be a different running game than it was a year ago because they've got a running back by committee. Roschon Johnson's not there either. But I think they have enough skill talent that I feel like they'll be fine. I think the run blocking up front and the way they scheme it up is pretty good. So I don't have concerns about them. And nobody really runs on Alabama anyway. Let's be honest. This is, I mean, even Bijan last year, I think ended up with like 50-something yards.
Dude, Bijan was running against an NFL front last year. That was like NFL run defense that he was finally seeing.
This is not a team that you're going to grind out a bunch of yards against, but you need to have some presence because you cannot – that drop back passing game, the play action pass will not work if the run does not get you something. And so they have to get something out of that. But this is going to have to be the Quinn Ewers game, in my opinion. This is going to have to be Quinn Ewers' time to shine. He's going to have to play like he did in the first quarter of that game last year for 4 quarters, and hopefully they can keep him in it. Hopefully they can protect him because he took some hits on Saturday against Rice, and they've got to fix that in a big way. I don't have really much question about their game plan ability. I have a question about whether or not they're going to execute at a high level.